My wife said her ex knew how to treat a woman, so I treated her exactly how she treated me, and she couldn't handle it. I married Samantha because she felt right from the start. We met through friends and clicked fast. She was funny. We dated for 2 years and got married during COVID. It wasn't a big wedding, but it felt steady and warm. For 3 years, I put my heart into us. Date nights, breakfast notes on the fridge, dinners I cooked even when work ran late. She used to say I made her feel safe. I believed that meant we were good. After our 3rd anniversary, something shifted. It was small at first. More time on her phone. Short answers. Less laughter. More sighs. When I asked what was wrong, she said, "Nothing. I'm just tired." I wanted to trust her words, so I did. I told myself it was a rough patch and kept going. Then came the Friday dinner at a friend's place. 8 of us around a table, passing dishes, telling stories from the week. It felt easy for a while. Someone made a joke about how men these days don't know how to treat a woman. People laughed. It was one of those harmless lines guests toss out to keep the talk moving. Samantha laughed too, but the way she laughed made the room lean in. Clear, like she was about to deliver a point. She said, "Well, my ex did. He knew how to treat a woman." The room went quiet. You could hear the ice shift in a glass. I kept my voice light and said, "Guess I've got competition from the past." I tried to give her a way out, a chance to say she was kidding, but she didn't stop. She added, "He used to surprise me, take me dancing, write me letters. He really paid attention." My face felt hot. I looked at my plate and took a sip of water. Nobody spoke. Our friends stared down at their food. The host changed the subject. I laughed at the next joke, but it sounded thin in my own ears. The rest of the night went by in a blur of small talk and dessert plates. People hugged at the door and said, "We should do this again." On the drive home, the streetlights slid across the windshield. She scrolled on her phone and then set it down. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm fine," I told her. It was true and not true at the same time. I felt a kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not even shock, just a steady, cold calm. Like I had heard something that could not be taken back. We pulled into our driveway. The porch light was on. We went inside and moved around each other like we were guests in a stranger's house. She went to take off her makeup. I locked the door and stood there for a moment, listening to the hum of the fridge, the soft clink of her perfume bottle on the counter. I kept thinking about what she'd said. Not the dancing or the letters. The part where she said he paid attention. I thought about all the small things I did because I loved her. Writing a note before work. Setting aside her favorite mug. Keeping a spare charger in my bag for her phone. None of that is grand romance. It's daily care. It is attention. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. She got in beside me and turned on a show. The light flickered on the wall. She rested her head on the pillow and didn't say goodnight. I didn't either. That moment at the table had drawn a line I could feel. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. I didn't plan revenge. I just understood something new. She was no longer seeing what was right in front of her. She was holding up a memory and measuring me against it. And once you become a scorecard in your own marriage, it stops feeling like love. It starts feeling like a test you didn't agree to take. The next morning felt different. Not louder or colder, just empty. Samantha made coffee, scrolled through her phone, and hummed like nothing had happened. I watched her from across the table, the way someone might look at a photograph, familiar, but distant. She looked up once and asked, "You're quiet. Still thinking about last night?" I shrugged. "A little." She waved her hand. "Oh, come on, it was a joke." But we both knew it wasn't. That comment didn't just slip out. It came from somewhere, a truth she'd been holding, maybe without realizing it. I didn't want to argue or drag it out. I just nodded and said, "Okay," then stood up and went about my day. Over the next week, I didn't plan anything. No surprise dinners. I didn't do it out of spite. I simply stopped reaching for someone who no longer reached back. At first, she didn't notice. The house ran on autopilot. She worked, scrolled, watched shows. When she asked if I wanted to watch something together, I'd smile politely and say, "Maybe later." I started going for long evening walks. Sometimes I'd hit the gym, grab coffee with friends I hadn't seen in a while. I didn't tell her every detail like before, and she didn't ask. But then, small cracks appeared in her calm. One night, she leaned against the doorframe and asked, "You're not texting me at work anymore. Everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I said. She frowned. "You used to check in." I looked at her and said gently, "You said your ex knew how to treat a woman. Maybe I'm just not him." Her eyes shifted, like she wasn't sure how to respond. She didn't argue. She just stood there for a moment, then nodded and walked away. That was the first time I saw it. A flicker of regret. The moment she realized her words had landed harder than she meant. Still, I stayed calm. I didn't bring it up again. I didn't need to. Silence does the talking when you've been overlooked for too long. I began to fill my time with things I'd forgotten I enjoyed, reading before bed, going on runs, calling my parents just to talk. I realized how much energy I'd spent trying to make her feel special, while slowly losing sight of my own needs. By the second week, the silence between us wasn't tense. It was revealing. You can tell a lot about a relationship when the noise fades. She started cooking dinner again, putting on music and lighting candles. Once, she set my plate down and smiled. I thought we could eat together. We did. We talked a little, small things, like the weather, errands, and her work. But something in me stayed quiet. Not out of anger, just awareness. When she reached for my hand across the table, I let her, but my heart didn't move. Because love that's constantly measured against a memory never feels like love. It feels like debt you can't pay off. By the end of the month, she looked at me one night and said, "You're changing." I met her eyes and replied, "No. I'm just remembering who I was before I started trying so hard." She didn't say anything back, just nodded slowly, as if the truth finally landed. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't feel the urge to fix it. I wasn't trying to win her back or prove my worth. I was simply living. Because the moment you stop begging to be seen, you start noticing how much peace lives in your own silence. A few nights later, we were sitting in the living room. The TV was on, but neither of us was really watching. The silence wasn't angry, just heavy. She glanced over at me and said quietly, "I don't want to lose you." I looked at her for a long second before replying, "I'm not sure you ever wanted to keep me." Her eyes softened, but I could tell she didn't fully understand. What she saw as a rough patch was something deeper. I wasn't angry. I wasn't punishing her. I'd simply stepped back and noticed how invisible I had become in my own marriage. That was the night it truly sank in. Not for me, but for her. She realized the man sitting across from her wasn't the same one she could always count on to smooth things over. I hadn't left physically, but emotionally, I was already halfway gone. And once a man leaves like that, he rarely comes back. The next few days followed the same quiet rhythm. I'd get up early, make coffee, and go for a jog. She'd watch from the kitchen, like she wanted to say something but didn't know where to start. Sometimes she'd text me during the day, little messages like, "Hope your morning's going okay," or "Thinking of you." I'd reply politely, short and calm. No warmth, no coldness, just simple honesty. It wasn't about playing games. I just didn't have it in me to perform anymore. Love can't grow in a place where it's taken for granted. One Saturday, she came to my office with lunch. It caught me off guard. She hadn't done that in years. "Thought I'd surprise you," she said with a soft smile. I thanked her, but we both knew it wasn't the same. It felt like an echo of something we used to be. That weekend, she asked if we could talk. I agreed. We sat across the kitchen table, the same spot where I'd once surprised her with pancakes and coffee. She stared down at her hands and said, "I feel like you're not here anymore." I looked at her and said, "You made me invisible long before I disappeared." She blinked, unsure how to respond. I continued, calm but firm. "You compared me to someone who isn't even part of your life anymore. You said he knew how to treat a woman. Maybe he did. But I wasn't trying to treat you like any woman. I was treating you like my wife." That last word hung in the air, wife. The weight of it seemed to land. She looked up, eyes glossy. "It was just a stupid thing to say," she whispered. "Maybe," I said. "But stupid things have a way of revealing the truth." For a moment, neither of us spoke. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't to blame. It was simply honesty that had waited too long. She reached across the table, trying to close the gap. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," I said softly. "But you did. And it's not about one night. It's about everything that's come since. The distance, the comparisons, the way I've been loving you without being seen." Her shoulders dropped. The realization finally hit. Not just what she said, but what it meant. She wasn't losing a husband over one comment. She was losing him over every quiet moment that followed. That night, I slept on my side of the bed and listened to her breathing beside me. She turned once, maybe to reach for me, but stopped halfway. I didn't move. I wasn't cold or cruel. I just didn't have it in me anymore. After that talk, something shifted. Not in me. I'd already changed, but in her. Samantha started trying again. She asked about my day. She'd text small things like, "Dinner at 7? Your favorite pasta." Sometimes she'd reach for my hand during a movie or leave a note on the counter. It was gentle, sincere, but late. Love doesn't return on command. You can't fix something by retracing old steps. Once a person has stopped hoping, kindness feels like nostalgia, not healing. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't shutting her out. I just didn't feel the same. The warmth I used to pour into us now flowed elsewhere, into things that made me feel alive again. I started woodworking, something I'd loved years ago. It was peaceful. Me, a block of wood, and silence that didn't hurt. I joined a local class, met a small group of people who joked freely and didn't walk on eggshells. Among them was a woman named Emily. She was kind, funny in an easy way and never in a rush to speak. We became friends, just friends. But the contrast was hard to ignore. Talking to her felt light. No comparisons. No quiet tests. Just two people sharing space. At home, Samantha noticed. One evening, while I was sanding a piece of wood, she leaned on the doorframe. "You're glowing lately," she said softly. I smiled, not proud, not distant, just honest. Maybe because I stopped chasing someone who doesn't know what they have. She looked down, then away. No argument this time. She knew. In the following weeks, she tried harder. One night, I came home to find the table set, candles lit, our wedding playlist humming softly. She handed me a letter, handwritten, folded neatly. Her words were raw. "I realize how much I hurt you." I kept looking back instead of seeing the man right in front of me. "You've always treated me better than anyone ever did." I read it twice. It was beautiful, real, but my heart didn't stir. Regret isn't love. It's a mirror of what's gone. I nodded and thanked her. She reached across the table, eyes full of hope. "We can fix this, right?" I didn't answer right away. I just held her hand for a moment. "Sometimes," I said gently, "we break things by accident. But sometimes, we lose them by not noticing they're breaking at all." We sat in silence after that. She cried quietly. I didn't stop her. Not because I didn't care, but because I'd finally accepted that love built on comparison can't stand tall. It leans until it falls. A few weeks later, I started packing a small suitcase. Not in secret. She walked into the room and froze. "You're leaving?" "Yes," I said. "I've been gone a long time, Sam. This is just my body catching up." Her voice cracked, soft but certain. "Please, we can fix this." I shook my head. "You compared me to a memory. And then you remembered me only when I became one." She stepped closer, tears pooling, searching for words that could pull me back. But there weren't any. I zipped the suitcase. My clothes, my toothbrush, the book on my nightstand, small pieces of a life I had given my best to. As I turned toward the door, I looked at her one last time. Not in anger, not in blame, just quiet acceptance. Sometimes, the hardest goodbyes aren't loud or cruel. They're calm. They come when one person finally learns that peace matters more than being understood. She stood by the doorway, eyes red, voice trembling but steady. "Please, Daniel, don't go. I'll change. I promise." I paused, suitcase in hand, and looked at her. "Sam," I said softly, "love isn't a switch. You can't turn it back on after dimming it for years." Her lip quivered, but I didn't move closer. I walked over and wrapped my arms around her, not like a husband trying to fix things, but like someone saying goodbye to a chapter that had already ended. It wasn't cold. It was closure. She held on tight, whispering, "I'll do better." "I know," I said, "and I hope you do. But I can't keep living in the shadow of a memory. You said your ex knew how to treat a woman. Maybe he did. But I treated you. I was here. You just stopped seeing me." She stepped back, tears streaming, and for the first time, I saw understanding in her face. Not just regret, but realization. I turned toward the door. My keys jingled softly as I picked them up. Leaving wasn't dramatic. No yelling. Just a quiet walk toward peace. That night, I checked into a small rental apartment. One suitcase, one toothbrush, one man finally choosing himself. It didn't feel like victory. It felt calm. And that calm, after years of overextending, felt like oxygen. The first few weeks were quiet. I went to work, hit the gym, and read before bed. I reconnected with friends, spent time outdoors, took long drives without destination. I didn't block her. I didn't stalk her pages. I just moved forward. Emily and I stayed friends. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. She'd ask how I was doing, and I'd tell her honestly, better. Not because someone new had entered my life, but because I finally had. Months passed. One evening, after finishing a woodworking project, I checked my phone and saw a message from Samantha. "You were right. He never knew how to treat a woman. You did. I was just too blind to see it." I stared at the message for a few seconds. The old me would have replied, comforted her, given her closure. But this time I didn't. I turned off my phone, set it face down, and exhaled. Some apologies arrive with truth, but no timing. And sometimes, when healing finally takes root, you realize you don't need the words you once begged for. Looking back, I don't hate her. She wasn't cruel. She was careless with something real. We both played our part. I gave too much. She noticed too late. But I've learned something simple and hard. When you stop begging to be seen, you begin seeing yourself. These days, life is quiet. I make coffee in the morning, walk outside, breathe. I don't replay that dinner party or the silence that followed. It doesn't haunt me. It reminds me. Because peace, I've found, isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about remembering your worth. She once said her ex knew how to treat a woman. Now, she knows what it feels like to lose a man who actually did. I appreciate you watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content.